During a family dinner, I was so excited to share my pregnancy news with my mother-in-law. To my shock, she accused me of faking it to get my husband's $50 million. Before I knew it, she threw me off the hotel terrace to prove her point. I was injured, and my husband rushed me to the hospital, where the doctor shocked us by saying. I was stunned, and my life collapsed at that moment. I'm Maria, and lately, my life has felt like a roller coaster ride. To be honest, I never thought I'd share all of this, but life has a funny way of throwing surprises at you when you least expect it. I'm 31 years old and work as a marketing executive. Up until recently, I thought I had my life all sorted out. A little over a year ago, I married Paul, my college sweetheart. We were so happy and felt like we were on top of the world. Not long after getting married, we got some incredible news. I found out I was pregnant. This was our little secret, and we were beyond excited. One evening, I couldn't keep my excitement in any longer. I turned to Paul and said, "Can you believe it? We're going to be parents." I could barely contain my joy. Paul pulled me into a big hug, his eyes shining. "I know, Maria, it's amazing," he said, smiling. "But remember, we should keep it quiet until after the first trimester." He was calm and thoughtful, reminding me to be cautious, and I agreed. But keeping this huge secret was a lot harder than I expected, especially around Paul's family. Speaking of Paul's family, that's a whole different story. There's Janet, my mother-in-law. She's a nice person, but she can be a bit much. Janet still treats Paul like he's a kid who needs her constant attention and advice. Then there's Paul's dad, Jason, who's usually quiet and doesn't really get involved in family matters. Paul also has two siblings, his sister Emma, who often acts like I'm her competition, giving me looks as if I stole something from her, and his brother Jacob, who barely talks to me, as if I'm not even there. Family gatherings are, to put it mildly, a bit challenging. Take last Wednesday's lunch, for example. Paul and I were getting ready, and Janet suddenly noticed a small wrinkle on his shirt. "Paul, honey, your shirt's wrinkled." "Maria, don't you know how to use an iron?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to make me wince. I felt a wave of irritation but managed to keep my cool. "I'll double-check next time, Janet," I replied with a forced smile, trying to stay polite. As if that wasn't enough, Emma jumped in. "Oh, Maria, don't worry about it. Not everyone's meant to be a homemaker," she added with a smirk. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I held back, refusing to let them see how much their comments bothered me. Later that evening, I called my best friend Angela to vent. "If Janet makes one more snide comment about my housekeeping, I'm going to lose it," I groaned. Angela's laughter filled the phone. "Girl, you married Paul, not his mother. Just tell her to back off," she said, trying to lighten the mood. "I wish it were that simple," I sighed. "Paul hates conflict, and I don't want to make things worse. But sometimes it's so hard to deal with this. Despite everything, I know I love Paul and want to make things work. But right now, I'm figuring out how to balance being a wife, a future mom, and just myself, all while handling family dynamics that I never quite anticipated. I feel like I'm drowning under all the expectations everyone has for me." My friend Angela is always the voice of reason. She told me, "Maria, you need to stand up for yourself, especially now that you're having a baby." I knew she was right, of course, but the thought of speaking up made me feel sick. Although, to be honest, it could have also been the morning sickness. As the weeks went by, it became harder and harder to keep the pregnancy a secret. One night, Paul and I were lying in bed, and he looked at me with a mix of excitement and nerves. "Maria, I think it's time. Let's tell them about the baby at the family dinner next week," he said, his eyes searching mine. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to keep our happy news just between us, safe from Janet's constant judgment and Emma's jealousy. But I knew that we couldn't hide it forever. "Okay," I said, trying to sound confident. "Let's do it." But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that this announcement would change everything. Little did I know how right I was, and just how wrong things would turn out. The day of the family dinner finally arrived, and I was a nervous wreck. I spent hours cooking, hoping to impress Janet, though I knew that was probably a dream. Sure enough, as soon as we sat down, Janet had something to say. "Maria, dear, the roast is a bit dry. Did you forget to baste it?" she asked, her voice sugary but sharp. I forced a smile. "I'll keep that in mind for next time," I said, swallowing my frustration. Then, as if that wasn't enough, she added, "And that dress, is it new? It looks a bit tight, don't you think?" Her eyes drifted down to my waist, and I felt my face heat up. Just then, Paul cleared his throat. "Actually, Mom, we have some news," he said. My heart pounded as he glanced at me for support. "Maria and we're having a baby." There was a brief silence, and then everyone reacted at once. Jason, Paul's dad, actually smiled, which was rare, and Jacob mumbled a quick congratulations. Emma, on the other hand, looked like she'd swallowed something sour. But Janet's reaction was the one that took my breath away. "Are you sure, Paul? How do you know she's not making it up?" Janet said, her tone icy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me? I managed to say, my voice shaking. It's just convenient timing, isn't it? Janet continued, right as Paul's career is taking off. Paul looked genuinely confused. What are you talking about, Mom? Emma jumped in eagerly. Remember when Maria was so adamant about birth control? Funny how that changed, she said with a smug look. I felt their accusations crush me, and I couldn't hold back anymore. That was over a year ago. I protested. We decided together that we were ready for a family. But the happy moment was gone. Now you can watch the second part by pressing share and more.